While I was preparing a recap of the government's opposition to Diddy's most recent motion for bail, this just dropped, a letter from Diddy's attorneys. And if it's true, this is bad news for the prosecution and potentially the trial. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor. We got a lot of updates for you today. Make sure you've hit that subscribe if you haven't already. And yes, there's big news in that the government's opposition to Diddy's most recent bail attempt is shocking. There's a lot of allegations in here, and we're going to go through that. In fact, I'm going to make that part 2 of this video, along with some legal analysis, because there's a lot of stuff redacted. There's a lot of accusations. Look at that. So many things blacked out. There's a lot of look at all this. But there's one thing in particular that Diddy's team is pointing out. And they're talking about it right here. The fact that they are using materials that may include possibly privileged materials. That's point 4 they're talking about up here, where they talked about while in custody, investigators recovered the following notes from defendant's cell during a pre-planned nationwide sweep of the facilities. I guess that was to try to get Diddy's information. So now here's what Diddy's responding. I want to start here because this is breaking and this is bad. If they screwed up and this is real, this is bad, and I'll explain why. So here's what the letter to the judge says. This is Diddy's team. Defense counsel has recently learned that prosecutors are in possession of attorney-client privilege material, including the defendant's own written notes. This search and seizure are in violation of Mr. Combs' 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. Moreover, the targeted seizure of a pretrial detainee's work product and privileged materials created in preparation for trial is outrageous government conduct amounting to a substantive due process violation. Because the prosecutors are currently in possession of privileged material and are actively using this material to detain the defendant, the defense rests an immediate evidentiary hearing. This is an emergent matter because the government has Mr. Combs' privileged notes to his lawyers concerning defense witnesses and defense strategies. Government's opposition to defendant's bail motion states that the trial prosecutors are currently in possession of possibly privileged materials, I just read that, such as notes recovered from the cell. In fact, the government is in possession of written material that is absolutely privileged. This is a matter of grave concern that, most respectively, must be addressed immediately for the following reasons. First, there is no dispute that the government is in possession of privileged material. Second, until receiving the government submission at 11:30 p.m. on Friday, the defense had never been told that Mr. Combs' notes were taken from the cell, that these notes were given to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and these notes were then given to the trial prosecutors in the case, who then used this material in a filing to keep Mr. Combs detained. We request an immediate hearing at which the government shall provide answers to the following question. First, who authorized a search of Mr. Combs' sleeping area, personal effects, and paperwork? Second, who determined what paperwork to take? Third, who decided to give this paperwork to the U.S. Attorney's Office? Fourth, who decided to give his paperwork to the trial prosecutors? Fifth, who made the decision not to tell Combs' counsel that the U.S. attorney was in possession of his notes, including possibly privileged material, until after the government put them in a filing to keep him incarcerated? Sixth, exactly what material was taken? Because the U.S. attorney and it seems the trial prosecutors are currently in possession of privileged materials, we request a full evidentiary hearing as soon as the court can accommodate us. Now, I highly suspect this is now going to get heard because this is legit. I've talked to multiple lawyers to try to verify this. They've all confirmed that, yes, if this is true, and there's not a good excuse for it, which there could be some explanation. You got to remember, the way these things work is they have apparently filtered teams, where teams gather and they're able to sort of separate and give the non-privileged information to the investigating authorities, while the other stuff remains behind closed. But, I mean, that's just hard to not think that someone couldn't just be like, what does that say over there? Cool. Don't tell anybody I looked. That would be corruption. That would be awful, but that's what's happening. Now, the reason this is just scary is because they're making good points here. They're asking good questions. This looks shady. Now, look, I'm not a Diddy fan. I'm not trying to defend Diddy, but I've said all along, I want to make sure we get a fair trial, because if we don't, that's how he gets out, folks. And this is exactly how he gets out. This absolutely could cause a mistrial later, that this wasn't a fair trial. All of this is really bad news if, in fact, they were able to use notes that Diddy was making, client notes. It's just massively bad news. And yeah, as Christopher just told me, the court could block the government from using any evidence it obtained from the search of his cell, which will make it easier for him to get out on bail. The court could also disqualify the prosecution team and make them pick new members. This is bad, if actually true. Now, they're going to try to deny it, I have no doubt. Now, maybe there is excuses as to what happened here, but this filing is no joke. This is no joke, and it will, like, as I'm being told, and we're going to bring on our lawyers. I'm going to get one of our lawyer panels together later this afternoon to go through what this means, along with going through the shocking revelations in this, which I don't want to keep spoiling it, teasing it, but in this, there's examples of him apparently still intimidating witnesses, using other cellmates' phones to reach said witnesses. There's evidence in this filing from the government that he was using his family to make that Instagram post, which we assumed already in our reporting here. There is some awful, awful stuff in here that reaffirms why he is being detained, that he's breaking the rules in prison to get around them, that he's manipulating his own family to try to taint the jury pool. A lot of stuff that they've been worried about is still happening while he's behind bars. And that's why they're saying, you know what, no, you can't, you have to deny his motion for bail, and this is why he's being detained. But, to see this reply, I'm always going to keep it fair and honest. This is troubling to read, extremely troubling to read, that they are potentially doing. Now, hopefully they'll have an explanation and that what the court will be able to accept. But they make a very good argument here. They're asking very good questions. Will we be able to get fair answers? And this is where things are going to start getting wonky, where people are going to, Diddy defenders, which exist. They were out to get him. He can't get a free trial. He never had a free trial. They had him all day long. Oh yeah, they were filtering things, sure. Like they weren't sharing information. They got caught doing it. They denied it, blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, sure. That department had it and this department didn't. This is going to create a massively theorized and more support for Diddy, and potentially help him later get that mistrial or whatever, other things that sort of throws us all out. Could the whole team be removed? A new one comes in. This is wild. And I imagine we're going to hear this pretty quickly. This does feel like an emergency order that's justified to figure out what the heck you're talking about. They have rights. Diddy and his team have rights. And if their due process is being, ignored, and they're literally, we talked about that seizure at the jail. Clearly that was part of it. They used that seizure to check for things, to take his notes. Look, I hate that I have some empathy for this man, but my God, he deserves a chance to prepare his defense. I want him to do that fairly.